So once again, today's webinar on SSI Benefits and Work Incentives, Part 2. My name is Wayne Shoemate, and I'm the co-state lead for the Missouri Employment First State Leadership Program and representing the Division of Developmental Disabilities. As we would encourage you to ask content questions in the Q&A box. Again, that box is located at the very bottom of your screen. If you're having technical issues with audio or visual, we would encourage you to post those questions in the chat box. All levels are muted upon entry, so if you do have questions, please type those in the Q&A. And I will turn it over to Ashley.
Wonderful. Thank you. Happy Monday, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you again on a beautiful Monday afternoon. As mentioned, we are like deep now into benefits planning information. So this webinar 4, which ended up being a 2-part SSI series. So today we're going to really dive into what are those work incentives, not automatic work incentives, but other work incentives that folks can access as being a beneficiary of SSI. Let's just dive right in. We are going to, again, identify specialized work incentives that are specific to the SSI program. So again, for you visual folks out there, I want you to close the door to Title II benefits today and just open the door to SSI benefits, because that's where we're going to be hanging out, is in the SSI room today. We're going to look at application and examples of each work incentive. We're going to fly through them because there are quite a few. I want you to know that Janet will recap this information when you all get together on site. So, we'll just dive right in. So here are the ones that we're going to cover today. First, talk about the student earned income exclusion, impairment-related work expenses, the work expenses, the to achieve self-support, better known as PASS, 16B, and then pre-essential for self-support. So as you can see, a lot of those test questions that were on the pre-test, which will also be on the post-test, we're going to be covering today. So special note to be aware of the content we're covering if you want to get 10 out of 10. So student earned income exclusion. So if you are supporting anyone who is in school, I want you to perk up your ears, because this is a fantastic work incentive for students and a huge reassurance oftentimes to parents and families who are supporting their student. So also better known as SEIE, because we love acronyms in this field, so you can also reference it as SEIE. So the exciting thing about this is students working, they get to keep more of their SSI. So a lot of individuals and families, I've worked with many high school students, and I've heard family after family share, well, Joe probably shouldn't work because he's receiving SSI, and we really don't want him to lose that benefit, particularly the Medicaid. We're not going to lose the student earned income exclusion. This is a prime opportunity for you to say, you know what, there's a great work incentive that protects students and really encourages students to have more money in their pocket. So for the first $1,820 of gross earnings earned in 2018, that's excluded. So if we're in a room together, I would say raise your hands high if you're supporting a student who makes $1,820 in gross earnings. Far in all of my trainings, nobody raises their hand, which means their SSI check isn't going to fluctuate. The first $1,820 SSI or SSA, closes their eyes to that. So that's huge, right? Up to $7,350 per year. So the max amount in a year that can be excluded, that SSA closes their eyes to. It's a January through December, it's an annual period. So even if that student is not going to school during those summer months, it's still going to count. So they can still work in those summer months. And as long as I'm going back to school in the fall, SEIE still protects me in those summer months, if that makes sense. So an example here. The eligibility piece. So who can access SEIE? Anyone under the age of 22. Okay, so they also have to be regularly attending school. So reference this in your red book. That's that handout, an electronic copy. You can also print it out. You can also ask SSA to send you a red book. As soon as someone hits the age of 22, SEIE is going to stop. So if I turn 22 in February, that means in March, I no longer have access to the student earned income exclusion. Okay, that age piece certainly does matter. So let's rewind back to last week a little bit. Remember that SSI calculation sheet that was in your handouts? So if you look, the very first exclusion that's listed on that SSI calc sheet is the student earned income exclusion, because that's the first thing Social Security Administration is going to look at in adjusting somebody's SSI check. Does the SEIE apply? And it applies to every single student. So it's a required work incentive. It's not optional for folks to participate. So, I mean, you know, it's great news for students. We want you to have more money in your pocket. So if you're in school and you're making money, it has to be applied. The cool thing is, if SSA misses this, you can go back and receive payment for their error. So it's a win, right? And the piece is you do make sure that you reach out to SSA and say, hey, I'm a student and I want to, you know I am a student. You may have to also show them your student ID card or your school schedule, just so you have some proof. As you can see, that's kind of a consistent thing through SSA, is you've got to provide some proof, but you've got to prove, hey, I'm a student and I'm currently enrolled in school. But there's a win-win-win for students. The other piece is that we know statistically that the top two indicators of success in employment post-graduation is paid work experience and paid expectations. So if you have any, SEIE supports both, right? It's helping students get more money in their pocket, and two, it's also a huge reassurance for individuals and families that I still have access to Medicaid, I still get my full SSI check 9 times out of 10, because again, I don't know very many people or students who are making $1,800 in gross income per month, right? So it's a deal for students. So you need to really be attending school. So that means a college university, at least 8 hours a week. It could also be traditional school, so grades 7 through 12, at least 12 hours a week. It could be a combination of school and a training program. It could also be students who are homeschooled, home students, and students who are also accessing online schooling. So the whole idea is that your education is helping you to be less reliant on benefits in the future, because you're receiving an education. You're learning skills that are going to apply to the workplace and help you to be less reliant on that benefit. So SSA really does want to support folks to be less reliant on the benefit, and they use the work incentives to help encourage folks to do that and have tools in place to get those out of poverty. To report the student status. So again, it's reaching out to the Social Security Administration, all numbers, and let them know, hey, you know, I'm a student, or the payee could also call and just provide verification of their student ID card. It could be a tuition receipt, it could be a schedule, but you just need to have some sort of documentation that, hey, Joe is in school. Back up. All right, so let's look at the SEIE question. So Pete is 20 years old, participating in a Senior Plus program, so like a super senior program at his high school. He recently got a part-time job making $1,000 per month. Does Pete qualify for the student earned income exclusion? So 74 of you said yes, he does. And Pete absolutely does qualify for the student earned income exclusion. Remember that it is applied to everybody who's a student. If we go back and look at Pete's example here, he's 20 years old, so he's under the age of 22. He's participating in a Senior Plus program at his high school, so that means he is in high school, and even if it would have a training program attached to it, so say part of his day is in the school and part of the day is work experience, that's still going to count because the skills essentially that he's learning in the program help him be less reliant on that SSI check. And so he gets the part-time job, he's making $1,000 a month, which is, he gets to keep the $1,000 in gross wages. He's also going to get a full SSI check, which would be $750. And then he's going to have, almost $2 in his pocket, which is great news, right? So Pete, absolutely for the student earned income exclusion. So let's take a few minutes and see what questions you have around IE. All right, it says, can you get repayment if you never let SSA know you were in school until you're done? The answer is yes, you can. You can go back and SSA will honor it. Most likely you are still going to have to provide proof that the individual was in school and also show, if they were reporting and say that their check was reduced, that should have been something that SSA would have caught. But yes, even if you're done, you can go back and receive payment. So it's good news. Nelson may have had a question about the specific to Philip. But yeah, the great news is you can go back and access student earned income exclusion. So again, win for students. So again, if you are supporting anyone who's of transition age, and I imagine that a good chunk of you are, please remember the student earned income exclusion.
Actually, there is a question up in the chat box instead of the Q&A.
Oh, great,
inquiring,
thank you.
Is it 8 hours a week or 8 credit hours?
I pulled that language straight from the Red Book. So I would say it's 8 hours a week. But again, I would just contact your FSA claims rep and let them know. But if you're supporting anyone under the age of 22 and they're in any educational program, I would highly recommend accessing SEIE and having a call with your SSA claims rep. Folks, all right, so let's move on to the impairment-related work expense. So this one's going to sound a little familiar, right? Because it also applies to a Title II benefit, but we're door closed. Just know that IRWE hangs out in both rooms, okay? The essential concept is that we talked about before, that you get to keep more of your SSI when you're paying for certain expenses. So expenses need to be paid by you, the beneficiary. It's going to come out of your pocket. You have to be the one writing the check for it, paying for it. It can't be mom, it can't be dad, it can't be family, it can't be provider. It has to be you. It has to be based on impairment that you're receiving support for. So it has to be based on disability, not necessarily the disability that got you on the benefit, but it needs to be related to a disability that you're receiving treatment for, or support, or all this, whatever item you're paying for, it has to enable you to work. So in order for me to work or be successful in the workplace, I have to have this item. Maybe it's medication, maybe it's transportation, maybe it's personal care. It can be a variety of things, but it has to be specifically an impairment that I'm receiving support for, and I have to be the one paying out of pocket for it, okay? It has to be reasonable in price. So again, trip to Hawaii, or, if transportation is considered IRWE, traveling in your Lamborghini is not going to be reasonable in price, right? So just keep that in mind. So the amount of your expenses paid essentially are deducted in your SSI calculation sheet. So if you still have an SSI calculation sheet, I would recommend bringing it up. We're not going to be doing calculations today, but this way you can see where is it deducted in the process. So the big piece with the early is that you can get about half of the amount back in your excess check, because we'll get where it's at in the equation. And then it has to be approved by SSA, and you oftentimes are going to have to get a doctor's note just to prove justification that I need this item. And anytime I've requested a note from the doctor to support that justification, it's been very easy to do. Doctors are usually very willing to just write up a couple of sentences, and it doesn't have to be a letter from the doctor, that's 3 paragraphs long. It really just needs to have, diagnosis. Yes, this individual needs this to be on the job and to be successful in their life. So calculation sheet specific to step 2. So the P's I want you to look at are the highlighted comments. So in step 2, we're going to take the example of Joe making $1,000 in earned income. So his paycheck's $1,000. So reminder of the general income exclusion and the income exclusion. And remember, those are automatic. And so we're going to add those and up to 85. So we'll take 1,000 minus 85. And then you see the ERWI gets subtracted in there as well, which then takes us to 715, and then we divide by 2. So the important piece to notice is that the ERWI is subtracted before divide by 2, which means that way I get about half of that ERWI expense back in my SSI check, okay? So then the countable earned income is $357.50. Examples of ERWI. A lot of us really wish there was this black and white list that said this is an ERWI and this is not an ERWI. That doesn't really exist. There that give you ideas, but the beauty of it is you can really go to bat and negotiate what's considered to be an ERWI. So things I oftentimes think about, medications. If I'm paying out of pocket for a medication that say my insurance company or my managed care entity no longer pays for, I can use that as an ERWI, particularly if it helps me work. So for example, if I take a medication for anxiety, and that anxiety, if I'm not keeping anxiety in check, I'm not my best at work. So if I'm out of pocket for that medication, it could be considered an impairment-related work expense, and I'd get reimbursed up to half. Also, out of pocket for job coaching. Say I had access to voc rehab services, and now my case is closed, but I can't access Medicaid for some reason. They fall in the cracks. Receiving SSI, I could also pay out of pocket for job coaching and be reimbursed for a portion of that. Could be medical devices, routine medical supplies, some transportation, and then medical services. So I have some really crazy examples of ERWIs I've requested for folks, but just know that you can really negotiate around what's considered an ERWI. And you just have a conversation with your SSA claims rep and you explain to them the scenario. So you can put a doctor's note. They're often very willing to consider it to be an ERWI. So add an example. Receiving SSI, because we're only talking about SSI today. He's not entitled to a Title II benefit. He gets a job making $1,000 a month in gross wages. He pocket for his medications and blood tests every month for $200 due to his diagnosis. Could he consider the $200 in expenses an ERWI? Yes. And so they'll just answer it for you. The answer is yes, right? So he can definitely consider that $200 to be an ERWI, right? Because he's paying out of pocket for those medications and it's related to his diagnosis. He's going to have to give proof, but he's going to get extra $100 a month back to help cover those costs. Blind work expense. So this is for folks who specifically qualify for a blind work expense so they have to be statutorily blind under SSA's rules, okay, in order to access the blind work expense. So again, same intent. They get to keep more of their SSI while they're paying for work-related expenses. Again, only specific to folks who meet the SSA standards for blind. Again, says that are paid by the beneficiary. It enables me to work. The amount of expense can be deducted from my SSI calculation. And here's the kicker. I potentially get up to the entire amount back in my SSI check as opposed to half. So how would that be? We'll look in a second. Here are some examples. There are IRWI examples also are expansive. So state and federal taxes, union dues, mandatory pension contributions, guide, child care, transportation, meals that are consumed during work, and reader services. Here's the example in our calculation sheet. So Pete is earning $1,000. He gets to use the automatic work incentives as the general and earned income exclusion. We're going to add those up to be 85. We subtract the 85 from the 1,000, which gives us $915. Then divide by 2, and then we subtract the BWE, or blind work expense amount. So the difference is, IRWI, I get up to half, BWE, I get the full amount, okay? So that's the big difference in the two that I'd like you to remember. Questions on IRWI or BWE? So, what if a student is working? Oh, so this is a student. We'll ask that one to it anyway. So, Caroline, what if a student is working as an unpaid intern for job training outside of school hours? So are you asking, so if this is working as an unpaid intern, but are they also participating in school? Because for the student earned income exclusion, you want them to be receiving paid employment. So if they were receiving a stipend or any sort of payment for their work, the student earned income exclusion would still apply as long as they're in school and under the age of 22. So Regina has a question specific to, I believe, so what are some examples of transportation expenses that might qualify? So for example, vehicle expenses, what would I be paying out of pocket for? So again, I would really encourage, so let's think, what is the person paying out of pocket for their transportation? Are they paying for a ride because that's the only accessible way to get to work? And if I'm paying out of pocket for that, they're going to say, okay, is there any other accessible option available to me? And would contact my SSI claims rep, and I would explain the scenario and say, could we count this as an IRWI? Because without this transportation, this accessible cab, I wouldn't get to and from work. Modifications for my vehicle. So again, the great things about IRWIs is they're black and white list, and the bad thing is there is no black and white list. So you want to make sure that you reach out to that claims rep and have a conversation with them. All right, the chat. Let's see. I don't think I see question here. Oh, more questions came in. Is B available as needed? What if someone doesn't need something monthly, but kind of, okay, so maybe, again, it's not, you can absolutely consider it. So for example, this would be an IRWI, but her glasses are an IRWI for her, because without her glasses, one, it's related to her disability. So her eyesight is impaired due to her diagnosis. And so therefore, she needs her glasses to be able to see and to work. So, but she'll buy her glasses, once a year, once every other year, but that's considered an IRWI. So BWE would be the exact same thing. Great question. Is it possible to use a monthly bus pass as an IRWI? The individual has to take the bus to work. If so, would they show their receipt of their monthly bus pass purchases? Yes, if it was considered, you would just need to show your receipt. Let me look into that further, just because sometimes there'll be more information on our information highway system of benefits answers. So there seems to be a lot of questions around transportation, so I'm going to write that down as one to give you all more information about to reference. But then I would honestly just contact the claims rep. The question is it related to their duty, right? So do I have to take the public bus to work due to my disabling condition? If I'm taking the public bus as regular on the street, it's not going to be an impairment-related work expense. But if it's related to my disability and I have to have it to get to work, then yes, okay? And we'll absolutely provide more information. All right, I'm going to keep plugging away. I don't see questions coming in. So my absolute favorite work incentive is the Plan to Achieve Self-Support, also known as PASS. So please, please, please remember PASS. It is a phenomenal work incentive for folks, and also for any of you who are job developers, it can really help folks more resources to the table with work through resource ownership. So the whole intent behind PASS is that I get to keep more of my SSI and pay for my food and shelter, to pay for my bills. We use money to pay for work expenses to become more self-sufficient. So what does that mean? I get to set aside my earned income, not my SSI. I don't get to put my SSI check aside. However, whatever is decreasing my SSI check or a Title II check, I can set some of that money aside, and my SSI check is going to go up because I'm setting aside this money for an approved work goal. So then if my SSI goes up, I can pay my bills, my food and my shelter with my SSI that's increased, and I can set aside my earned income or my unearned income from a Title II check and money. So it's a win-win for folks. So I'm going to put an account, but it has to be used for a very specific work goal that I've thought about, that I'm going to fill a PASS form. Maybe Janet would be providing that example to you. If not, I'll also make sure the PASS form is in the website. The idea is that I have to really think through a PASS goal. It could be for self-employment, it could be for school, it could be for equipment, but I'm saving money so that essentially once I've accomplished this work goal, it's going to make me less reliant on my SSI because I can either earn more money, I can work more, etc. So again, SSI, or I'm increasing my SSI to cover my living expenses, but my goal is to eliminate my need for Title II or significantly reduce my need for SSI. All plan is going to be time limited. Oftentimes it's 2 to 3 years is probably the average, but I have colleagues who have seen 5 years. So it just depends on what the work goal is for this individual. It's going to look different for everybody, okay? So here's a big kicker. So I need to creep open the door to Title II. If the current beneficiary, which means I receive an SSI check and a Title II check, I'm essentially the perfect candidate for a PASS plan. Let's look at why. So my SSDI, my unearned income, I put that less $20 into a bank account. So I'm going to save that money, let's say so I go to school, so I can go to college. I'm going to put that money aside in a separate bank account because SSA says, yes, Ashley, this is an approved plan for you. We're going to let you set this money aside, and in turn, we're going to bump up your SSI check to the full amount. So my full federal benefit amount plus the $20 of that automatic work incentive, and my DI is going to go into that separate bank account. So I can save money to pay for school or for a portion of school, okay? So you live in the best region for PASS plans. I kid you not. Our region has the most wonderful PASS cadre. Her name is Kate Rader. She is doing a training in your state this week about PASS plans, but she is phenomenal. We have worked with her for the person who trained her was fantastic. And so our region, our area is known for having folks access PASS plans. So please know you have a wonderful PASS cadre. What is the PASS cadre's role? Kate, Social Security Administration, and so she approves PASS plans that are submitted. So again, if I want to access a PASS, if I think that I want to have a PASS plan, I would fill out the PASS plan, 14 pages long, so it is extensive, but it really pushes the individual to think through, how is this going to support me to work more? How is this going to support me to have more money in my pocket? And then it also really pushes someone to research what are the costs and the reasonable costs behind what it is that I want to do. So for those of you who are supporting individuals with disabilities in accessing work, help them consider a PASS plan. If they, so for example, I support a young woman who worked a split shift at a hospital, and she had, but she couldn't get public transit. She couldn't get paratransit. Essentially, she couldn't get 4 rides approved per day. That was too many. So essentially, she could show up to work, and then she would have this huge break in the middle of her shift, so the entire day at the hospital. So what is, she used a PASS plan to purchase a vehicle so she could drive to and from work. So part of it is getting her license, part of it was going through driver's ed, purchasing the car. All of it was built into her PASS plan. But now she has access to pick up those split shifts, as opposed to before, really was not her at her best when she had to be at the hospital for 12 hours to work an 8-hour shift. So PASS plans can be used for a variety of cool things, but it's just a cool work incentive. So, all right, I'm going to keep holds. Tuition. School, if I'm going to any sort of school, right? It doesn't have to be your traditional college. It could be a training program. It could be an apprenticeship that maybe I need tools for the apprenticeship. It could be self-employment, startup costs, so anything within the first 2 years of my business. It could be resource ownership. So for example, say I'm working for a mechanic and I need to bring my own tools to work as a mechanic. The ownership would be me purchasing the tools, so I am considered an employee, that I'm considered someone who's also bringing resources with me to that place of employment. Or for example, would be if I talk to a small business who does screen printing and say, the $5,000 question, as we like to say. So if you go into a business and say, and we're going into a little job development here, but if you had $5,000 in your business, what would be your next big investment? And for one business, it was, we could produce twice as many T-shirts as had another screen printer, but we just we don't have the staff and we don't have the equipment. So this individual, he purchased the screen printer with a plan, and he also learned the screen printing tool. So, but if he were to be fired, he takes his resource with him. The idea is that people have resources at their fingertips, but we're not utilizing them. A vehicle, a lot of things could be considered a PASS, but just remember, the ultimate goal is to reduce or eliminate the need for SSI and their Title II benefit. Okay? All right. Let's go. Caroline, how much support an employment specialist provide to clients eligible for PASS plans, such as actually developing the plan and filling out paperwork for the client? Fantastic question, Caroline. So as a provider organization back in the day, we would absolutely provide supports to individuals completing the PASS. I highly encourage you to get some more training around PASS, helping folks fill out a PASS plan. But ultimately, the person owns the plan, right? So I, as the job seeker, have to have some ownership in the plan. And I also want to make sure that my team's aware of that as well. But we sat down with folks weekly and said, okay, here's your assignment of go research what type of car you would want and how much it would be, and research 3 different places. Research the car insurance. And, you know, they have individual or family supports doing that. They may have the residential supports helping them, or you may be helping them. But I absolutely think it's something that you can provide support around. It doesn't happen near enough. And the other kicker is if you're going to support someone in developing their path, ultimately, again, they own the document. It's their path plan. But folks need a lot of support in maintaining it once it's approved, because then Kate Rader, your past cadre, is going to be checking in every 6 months to say, what are you spending that money on? I need the receipts approved, or you need to send me the receipts of the approved expenses that are already on your past plan. So that past plan really pushes you to say, here are the exact expenses I'm spending my money on. And I also, in turn, have to be accountable to SSA and say, yes, this is exactly what I spent it on. Here are receipts. Here's how I'm trying along on my past plan. Question. Pamela, money in the past plan get absorbed if it's not used. So ideally, everything that you're planning for gets allocated, right? So that's why that past plan is 15 pages long, so that if you have an expense that's not listed on there that comes up, you need to check in with Kate and say, hey, this is an expense that you know, came that I didn't expect. And in turn, the opposite would be true as well. So you would just maintain that contact with Kate to see where you're at. But ideally, you've spent time planning that most of those expenses are already accounted for. How will PASS affect Medicaid? Beautiful question, Rachel. The great is if you have an approved PASS, it's not going to impact your Medicaid. It is one of those protected pieces. So a house, a car, your accounts up to, I believe, $120,000 and your PASS. So your Medicaid's going to be protected in there. Are there any examples of a PASS plan for someone that was not receiving Title II or SSD Title II benefits, or not a requirement to be eligible since they have? Okay, beautiful question. So no, the requirement is that you just have to have some sort of income coming in. So I could also be putting aside my paycheck, but the example with a concurrent beneficiary is just that they're a perfect PASS candidate, but essentially they're sitting on resources that they'd be using for a PASS for a specific role, if it makes sense for the individual. So good news is you don't have to be a concurrent beneficiary. I might just be receiving SSI, but say also get a job and I'm making $1,000 a month, then I would be able to put in $980 into my PASS account every month. And essentially, your PASS is you setting up a bank account. Your checks are going to increase, but the beneficiary is just going to the bank and setting up a separate bank account, and they're responsible for maintaining how much money goes into what account. So again, that support to help maintain folks in the process is super important. Jen, does the recipient, of SSI employed at the time of the PASS plan? No. And then can they have a PASS plan if they are in training and not working? Yes, absolutely. Rachel, can a parent of a disabled child who receives SSI open a PASS account? No, this would be specific to an individual who is receiving SSI as an adult. Now, if the parent was receiving SSI, then that would be specific to the parent. So, great questions, folks. Have 12 minutes, so we're going to keep plugging away. Another phenomenal work incentive is 1619B. And Janet and Charlie are going to go into much more detail around 1619B protection on your on-site training. So if we could save some of those questions to them, that would be fantastic. So the great thing about 1619B is that if my earned income, so if my paycheck causes my SSI to go down to zero, or what we like to say is balance out, I get to keep my Medicaid. This is phenomenal information for folks, right? Because oftentimes the myth is that I have to have at least $10 of an SSI check to be able to keep my Medicaid. That's true. 1619B protects me and says, even if I balance out my SSI check, I'm still on the SSI rolls, I'm not terminated, and I get to keep my Medicaid. So again, huge, huge, huge information for folks. The criteria is that I have to have received an SSI check the month before 1619B starts. I need to have access to Medicaid, so I might have to prove I need Medicaid for A, B, and C. I also continue to experience a disability, right? So I still have to meet that definition, essentially. Then I'm going to continue to meet the resource limit, SSI of non-financial eligibility criteria, and then my earnings are under an annual threshold. So for Missouri, as long as my earnings are under $37,188 per year, I can access 1619B protection. So for example, if I'm making $27,000 a year in gross wages, I'm going to balance my SSI check to zero. However, I still need Medicaid to support daily life. So I'm going to contact SSA, tell them about this great promotion that I have, and tell them I need to access 1619B protection to keep Medicaid while I've balanced out my SSI check. Huge, huge for folks. All right. Again, if there aren't any other questions on 1619B, I'm going to ask that you save those for your on-site, just because you'll have your Medicaid expert present, which is really essential in accessing 1619B to meet state specifics. So, property essential for self-support. This is another phenomenal work incentive. I get a little excited about these just because they provide folks with so much at their fingertips, and a lot of people just don't know that they even exist. So the used with PASS, so property essential for self-support, are resources, so it's essential for folks who are self-employed. So resources that are essential to a person's business. So I need to have these for my business to operate are excluded. So remember that whole, oh, I have to have under $2,000 in resources to have access to my Medicaid. PASS protects individuals who are self-employed, saying, yes, you certainly have more than $2,000 of resources in your business. However, if you use the property essential for self-support, those are protected. They do not count as your personal assets. So the piece is I have to have a sole proprietorship if I'm self-employed, okay? So regardless of value or rate of return. So examples, property that's used in trade or business, that is used by an individual as an employee for work, property required by an employer for work, resources or property must currently be used or be considered under PASS. So look at an example here. So this is a personal example of my sister. She's a business owner who runs M's Coffee Company. She needs certain equipment to run her business, such as an espresso machine, a coffee grinder, industrial sink, fridge, convection oven. All these items add up to be thousands of dollars. However, due to PASS, she doesn't need to worry about those resources impacting her SSI because she uses the property essential for self-support to cover those resources. The other piece is that she has to have a certain amount of money to keep her business flowing so that she can order coffee, still have enough money in her bank account to pay her employees. She has a certain cost flow. That also is considered and protected under PES. So it's a really huge work incentive to allow folks to access self-employment and to have essentially unlimited amount of resources in their PES, not impact their Medicaid, right? So it's huge. So review, so then we can get to questions. Multiple work incentives can be used at once. So it is true that I might have a PATH plan that's helping me pay for resources for my self-employment, and I'm also using Property Essential for self-support. Or, for example, maybe I'm using a PATH plan to save for a work goal, but I'm also using ERWI at the same time. So the idea I can braid these work incentives ever to best benefit me as an individual. Another piece is that not all work incentives are going to make sense for all people. It's not that you have to go out there and tell the world about all work incentives, right? However, as you're supporting folks and as you're learning more about their needs and desires for employment, hopefully Rolodex of benefits information is filing through and you're like, ooh, this might be a really good opportunity for someone to access an impairment-related work expense because they're paying out of pocket for medications. They're paying out of pocket for their classes that's related to their disability. Can be a variety of things, right? So the idea is that now that you have this information, as you're working with folks, you can start seeing the little light bulbs go off and say, ooh, this might apply. This might apply. It doesn't mean that you have to be the expert, right? I just want you to know that these things exist and can make the referral to your WIPA projects, which Janet's going to talk to you more about on site and who you refer to, and we'll talk a little bit about that next week as well. But know that there are experts that you can access. You're not alone in providing this information. I just want you to know that it exists. So even additional work incentives aren't in use, folks financially can get ahead, right? So want to look at is high income and low expense amount, they not be able to get anything extra on their SSI check regarding like an ERWI and a BWE. But the idea, again, is not you have to be experts in the work incentives, just know they exist and that you can connect with other folks around what those resources are. So let's do questions with the last 4 minutes of our time. So far, seeing any questions pop up. Oh, Jenny has a question. Thank you. Is there a time limit on PATH or PES? No. Well, let me clarify. So PATH, there isn't a specific time frame. I would say that there's an average, typically, of 2 to 3 years. Then you would want to work with Kate, or your PATH cadre, or those time frames. So again, my colleagues have seen PATH plans, I think, up to 5 years, but on average, 2 to 3 years. And for the Property Essential for self-support PES, there's no time limit on that. So as long as it's still a benefit for me in my business to protect those resources, I can still access the Property Essential for self-support, which is fantastic. Did you say that you have to apply for 1619B? You have to apply. It should be automatic, but I would contact SSA and say, so for example, say you know that someone just got a job or a raise that's going to balance out their SSI check. So you do the calculation and you see, oh, gee, Joe is going to balance out his check. I would really encourage Joe or his payee or you, with your support to contact his SSA claims rep. And so just got a raise, he's going to be making, $2,100 a month in gross wages. He's going to access 1619B protection so that they can make that note and make sure that he accesses that. So great question. I'll give folks just 30 minutes. Maybe we'll get you out of here right at 2:30 today. So I, again, just want to thank you guys for taking time in the middle of a Monday to talk about benefits information. I don't know if you get excited about it like I do, but it really, I think, gives us more tools to do our job and to really support folks to get out of poverty and to have more money in their pocket. So the whole intent behind all of this is helping folks get more money in their pocket and get accurate information around benefits planning and services. So thank you. I will make sure that I dig into the transportation piece and IRWE a little bit more and provide you guys with a little more guidance because I think that that's something that continually comes up with folks. So enjoy the rest of your week and see you for our 5th and final webinar next Monday, same place, same time.
Ashley, this is Bianca. I just want to let people know that Dwayne did send out that email with the pre-test results, so the information for the in-person training the week of August the 13th. So check your inboxes, check your junk mail. That information is there for you. And remember to make copies of the items that you wish to have present, bring those with you because we'll not have the ability to make additional copies on site. Thank you, everyone, for participating in today's webinar, and please remember to complete the brief survey upon the end of this webinar. Thank you.